Chernobyl, one of the deadliest man-made disasters in history, affecting millions of people both in the former USSR countries and across Europe. It's impossible to understand the full scale of the disaster, both due to the USSR holding back information and many effects of radiation being long-term. For example, one study models 60,000 deaths in comparison to the World Health Organization's 9,000. But there is no doubt many people were affected, from the first firefighters to enter the building to the 500,000 liquidators used in the effort to clean the surrounding areas.
So we've arrived at the 30-kilometre checkpoint, which is just behind me there. We've been given these meters which measure the amount of radioactivity we get subject to throughout the day. So hopefully it'll be that high, but we're looking forward to the day. What are we thinking?
I'm excited.
You excited?
It'll be good.
It's going to be good.
Looking forward to it.
It's going to be good. Let's go.
Currently attracting over 60,000 tourists per year, it is Ukraine's greatest tourist magnet, and the government wants to invest further in the area in order to boost its profits from visiting tourists. For some, visiting Chernobyl is a crucial reminder to help understand how human error can cause unimaginable suffering. For others, it is a complete disrespect towards the 100,000 people evacuated from their homes and those who are suffering with the psychological and physical consequences today. So, should an area which has had one of the deadliest man-made disasters in be allowed to be a tourist's playground? Number 1. Safety. Despite the concerns of many people, from a safety perspective, the health risks of a Chernobyl guided tour are actually quite small.
The average background radiation in Ukraine is usually about 0.13. Here it's 0.63, so not too high. That's because some years have passed and they've relayed all the soil. However, this noise shows it's over the recommended allowance for Ukraine, so yeah, it's still much higher.
Much of the environment has been cleaned, and on a day tour you get about as much radiation as on a 1-hour flight. For example, between London and Brussels.
You have to wait the whole hour, not here, not there, but exactly in this tiny place here, because gamma can be stopped even by the air. Yeah, so like 20 centimeters from this source of radioactivity doesn't work anymore. But even if you would spend the whole hour, you would get 120. It's still less than you would get in one X-ray of your chest. Yeah, but you would get it in 2 seconds, basically, instantly. Here you would get 120 in 1 hour. Anyway, you've got one in 5 hours in the zone. You've got one more in like 20 seconds here in this tiny hotspot.
When leaving the zone, you are screened for radioactivity to ensure you have not picked up any contamination. This is the same for the tour bus, so there are no concerns about taking anything harmful away, and if anything is contaminated, it must be left in the zone. There are therefore no issues with radioactive safety when it comes to allowing tourists into the zone. Number 2. The excitement of exploring an abandoned town. The excitement of walking around Zalisa and Pripyat were off the scale, and nothing like I've ever done before.
So we're in the first village, which is in the buffer zone, which is called Zalesa, which was home to 3,000 people, and it's just completely overgrown with trees.
It was like looking at a post-apocalyptic world from the vantage point of the aftermath. Papers left on the desks, dolls and toys in the nurseries. Seeing a town overrun by nature is breathtaking and gives you a glimpse of what a world will look like after humans have gone.
And now it's very abandoned. This is the main city square. There's an abandoned tree that's fallen across it.
It really emphasises how temporary human structures are when it comes to the power of nature.
There is life in Chernobyl.
Number 3. It is really beneficial for the Ukrainian economy. Ukraine has relatively poor infrastructure in comparison to the rest of Europe. For example, poor quality roads and unsafe tap water to drink. The funding to keep the exclusion zone safe even cost the government about $50 million per year. In 2016, they had to spend $1 billion on making it ecologically safe again. To make the zone self-sufficient, they therefore need to attract visitors. Interestingly, they are not referred to as tourists out of respect for the affected. For a 1-day tour, it cost around £70 each. For a 5-day, it reached £800. Also, as Kiev is the nearest city, only about a 2-hour drive from the zone, tourists will likely spend money in the city centre, helping the businesses there too. Number 4. Human suffering. There has been profound human suffering in the zone, and many think it is disrespectful to turn it into an open-air museum. 15,000 children have since developed thyroid cancer after being exposed to radiation, whilst 500,000 liquidators also suffered health consequences from the cleanup. Due to the secrecy of the USSR, many of these heroes have been forgotten, and therefore people argue it is immoral to allow tourists into an area where so many people have suffered. However, the largest health impact was the psychological effects.
And people here didn't really want to evacuate. They saw the 3-day evacuation period as 3 days off, and they all left it to the final few hours before they actually left, spending time at the stadium and swimming pool that we've just seen. And who can blame them? Radioactivity is obviously an invisible enemy, and they didn't really realise the true extent until years later.
There were many misconceptions about radiation exposure also, such as the loss of fertility and leukemia, which spread through communities.
Number 5.
The area has become a nature haven. The nuclear effects of Chernobyl have clear negative impacts on the surrounding environment. The fallout of the reactor has shown minor genetic damage in testing and a higher rate of structural deformities in young birds. However, the abandonment of the area surrounding Chernobyl by humans has led to positive change in the environment, outweighing the consequences of the nuclear fallout. There is now greater biodiversity and increased numbers of species in the exclusion zone. There are common sightings of moose and lynx, rare in other parts of Europe. Overall, the net effect appears to benefit the ecology and wildlife. By limiting tourism in the area, the government could help preserve this wildlife sanctuary. Dark tourism will always be a controversial topic, but I think the example of Chernobyl is a particularly interesting case study. There is no mass-scale evidence of death or suffering. Tourists must therefore be extra careful to not treat the zone as a playground, like it is on video games. The government must also ensure that it doesn't over-dramatise in order to reflect what actually happened. So approached ethically, Chernobyl can empower those affected by the disaster, not exploit them, and open our eyes to their suffering. And at the end of the day, I would rather be an inquisitive traveller than an ignorant foreigner.
So, let me know what you think. Should tourists be allowed to visit Chernobyl?